Uh, welcome, guys. Welcome to another episode of Shubham Gautam stream. I don't know why I said Shubham Gautam stream. Sorry for the delay. There's so many issues came up because I haven't done stream from a long time, and suddenly, one by one, सब कुछ आने लगा at a wrong time. Hopefully, अब सब कुछ smoothly होगा, and we won't face any other issues. Let's go through the things like what we're going to learn today. So basically, ये जो session है, it's about learning React.js for the beginners. One second, let me just do a mic test first. It could be an issue. Yep. Okay, so the mic is working fine. It shouldn't be an issue for you. Okay. I do one more setup for myself. ताकि मुझे आप लोग की आवाज़ आए. Okay. All good. All right, guys. Okay. So ये कोर्स किस लिए like ये स्ट्रीम किस के लिए फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल वो हम जानने की कोशिश करते हैं. तो बेसिकली दिस स्ट्रीम इज फॉर anyone or everyone who want to start with React.js and who have worked with React.js before or still want to understand the basics. और आपने अगर React.js का काम नहीं भी किया है तो भी इशू नहीं है. One second, guys. Sorry, 15-20 मिनट लगेगा. Okay, so even if you know the basics of HTML, JavaScript and CSS, right, that's more than enough to start with this course. And अगर आपको वो भी नहीं आता तो भी, and if you're enthusiastic and you want to learn about React.js, then also you can join this course. But why I'm saying course, it's just a live stream. So anyone and everyone invited, you can share this link with your friends and whoever interested on. So that was all about like who can attend this stream, right? And then second thing is keep prerequisite. Like before starting with React.js, what is the basic thing you should know? Like क्या क्या हमें आना चाहिए? So the basic few things like we can define three things like which are HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, right? And I assume if you have started this stream, you know basics of all these three things. But still, I will do a little bit of touch base in this. So HTML is nothing but let me give an example with network call, right? तो हम थोड़ी बहुत debugging भी सीखेंगे. We'll be learning about React.js and hopefully I'll clear you. And you can put your questions if you have questions or query about React.js. You can put it down in the comments. I'll try to answer that. So if you can go to your network tools, right? And जब भी आप call करो किसी भी website को, like with any domain call, it's generally return a response you back with a HTML, right? And this is the initial HTML response which will be rendering in your UI, like what you see in the browser. So your browser will start passing this HTML document and start making your HTML OM and CSS OM, the object model for your HTML nodes and the object model for your CSS nodes. And then it will join back and do a painting and publish in the UI, which is your application, whether it's a web app or it can be a mobile app. Okay. So this is the basically what happens with HTML, right? So that is hypertext markup language. So all your XML, HTML, all markup languages which are defined in nodes in a tag segment, and those tags have some properties, and those properties are interpreted by the compiler, and then it's been shown to the UI. Okay. CSS is basically a cascading style sheet. So by default, HTML doesn't have the power to give you a beautiful design like different layouts or creating different fonts and styling transitions. Those are not the capabilities of HTML. ठीक है. तो उन सब चीज़ों को लाने के लिए CSS is used, like basically to make it more beautiful your application. We use CSS, and JavaScript is the interaction part where you want to interact with your inputs, right? So basically all your peripheral inputs, I mean your mouse click, your keyboard input, your human touch and everything, right? All those things are handled by JavaScript. JavaScript is there's a much more thing which can be done through JavaScript. I'm just giving you some primary example. Okay, so this was the basic things which is required to start with a React course. Now, what is React, right? ये बहुत ज़्यादा ही पिछले कुछ दिनों से पिछले कुछ सालों से ये चल रहा है कि what is React and everyone wanted to move to React. Like, and why you want to learn React? First of the question, like, before starting to React.js, the first question which should come in your mind is why I have to learn React.js. Okay, so we'll look a little bit of history of React.js, okay, how it started and why it's been used now, why it's heavily used now. So basically, कुछ साल पहले Facebook was troubling with this issue कि they have this wall where जहाँ पे कई लोग post कर देते हैं and they immediately want to update the post. Right, you can see those posts coming in your wall, and anyone you know, anyone is your friend, anyone you're following, right? All their posts were coming up there, right? Immediately showing up one by one. And there's many part of the UI keep getting updated. It can be ads section, it can be information section, it can be game section, and no now so updating all these components in real time and then interacting with each other was a problem with them. Okay, so they came up with a solution. Okay, why not make our application more component based, and reactive? So everything will be individual and they can talk to with only data. So it will be more data driven. And once we go back deeper in the JavaScript, right, then you will see, sorry, not JavaScript, in the React.js, तब आप लोग देखेंगे कि how much data driven the components are, right? How much the data driven React.js is. ठीक है. So okay, so they came up with this React.js and it worked. It solved most of their problems, and then they open sourced it, and since it solved the Facebook problem, and those kind of problems were not facing by other people because वैसी हैवी एप्लीकेशन उस टाइम पे शायद ही कहीं यूज़ होती थी, बट it gave a path to other people to make the application faster and more interactive, and that's what happened, and that's why it's so much famous. And now React.js, it can work in the concept of React, and the concept of React is can be applied in React Native as well as React.js, as well as React Native Windows and React Native Mac. So it's like you can learn once, you can run the concept of React, like how the life cycles work, how the components work, and you can implement in most of the places, like everywhere. Like you can develop a mobile application, you can develop a native application, and you're good to go, right? Okay, so that was some introduction about React.js, and one more thing. This is like one of the most popular library in last couple of years. So if you look in the Google Trends, right, comparatively to Vue and Angular, React.js is kind of topping it out. If you take last 1 year of trend, so what does that mean to you? That a lot of companies and a lot of startups and a lot of places, companies in different places are using more and more React.js. Like, so it opens up the opportunity, and it opens up the uh, yeah, it's opens up the opportunity for you, right? You can have more jobs across different locations. तो आपका breadth बढ़ जाता है कि you can apply for different companies, and the adaptation is keep increasing, right? If you see the in compared to other libraries, the adaptation is still very high, pretty high. You can go to past 5 years, and we can see the uptrend going on, right? So it started from somewhere in the bottom, and now it's kind of moving up. Okay, so ये थोड़ी सी हिस्ट्री हो गई थी. Why I just got into history because it is important to know a bit of history about what you are learning, and now we'll go to like what are the things which is offered by React.js. So first of the thing is very declarative, like you declare interactive components. So what do I mean by interactive components is like basically you define component which contains its own template, which contains its own JavaScript, and it's everything. It's a own, like you can just plug and play this component to anywhere. So for example, let's remove this part. And let's say create another function called say title, and let's say just title returns, and say we pass something from here, props, right? And let's say it's written tag called title. Let's call this. So since everything is a component, you can create like basically the other components is a function by default. Like if you if you convert it back, it's a function, and since it's a every component you can use as a template. So now since I defined a title here, right, I can use a title here, and if I pass some props here, right, which is the title again, sorry, same props, say x, okay, thing it's empty. Title is not defined. Okay. Okay. Okay, it was coming. Sorry, there was, so that's the Shubham is coming here, and similarly, now I can pass different variable properties here, and my title component will return value accordingly, right? And one more thing it works with is called virtual DOM, and I will explain you virtual DOM because it's a very interesting and very important concept, right? So we don't want to miss in this. This is something we want to understand before moving forward. So, okay. So before learning virtual DOM, we should understand what is DOM is, right? So DOM is basically called as document object model. Okay. And what is a document object model is document object model is basically when your application, when your HTML is getting parsed, right? All the nodes are joined together and created as a document object model. Like one node as a parent and the all sub nodes goes as a child, and those all are connected via properties to each other, and that can be accessed via JavaScript. ठीक है? तो basically सबको like a top to bottom as a waterfall model बनता है, like a tree structure. In a tree, and every tag is a node, and parent will have multiple sub child nodes and all those. Okay, let me give example from here, right? So suppose this particular body will have the child nodes as script and these divs, and now these scripts will have another child nodes, like this inner HTML, and the div will have another child nodes and other data. Okay, so all these things are like uh, all these things are available in your DOM model. So you can use the DOM object to update these values. Okay, let me close this one. So why it's needed? Because being a JavaScript developer, being using any library or not using any library, if you want to working with like vanilla JavaScript or using AngularJS, Vue.js, you need a way to update your JavaScript, like the view, right? And that can be done only via DOM model. Okay. So in JavaScript, you can access the document object model via. Let me just clear this thing out first. Via document object. Okay. Now, if I enter document, it just give me the top node. See, पूरा HTML page यहाँ पे आ जाता है मेरा, ठीक है? HTML, doc type, and HTML head. Now, what I can do here is I can run a method called like query selector, and pass this. So the query selector takes queries like we do in CSS. तो अगर आपने CSS selectors use किए हैं, the same selectors can be used here to access a different objects, like different nodes of a document object model. ठीक है? So for example, if I want to access the body tag, I can just run this thing, and now I got the body element here. ठीक है? So what happen is कि जब भी आप अपने DOM nodes को अपडेट करते हो, या फिर when you change your CSS properties, right? You change the display none to display visible, and or change the height and width. Your CSS, like the DOM reflow gets called. ठीक है? So every change triggers your DOM update. Okay, think I need to close this thing. Right. So every change trigger this DOM update, which can be very heavy for you. Like, it can be very heavy for the application. ठीक है? That's why they like we don't sometimes हम लोग को ये समझ नहीं आता, like कि कई बार हम लोग क्या एक जो फॉर्म्स होते हैं हमारे फॉर एग्जांपल ओके लेट मी गिव एग्जांपल विद Facebook itself, right? वो एग्जांपल रहेगा. So in Facebook wall, you keep updating your Facebook wall again and again, right? So every time I update my document document object, it will immediately reflect in back in my UI. Okay? And when those operations are very heavy, like too many times, it will start freezing my application because my browser is not keeping up with my operations. Okay? So to solve this problem, what React came with their own DOM object, which is a replica of your original DOM. Okay? So how does it work is it's a lighter weight version of your original DOM. मतलब कि it's not exact DOM, but it's a copy snapshot of your DOM with not all the properties, which with some important properties which will work for him. And whenever you update your DOM, like in React.js, जो आप अपना DOM update करते हो, like when you update a value of a property of a div, or when you update a value of property of any element, you actually don't interact with original DOM. You interact with virtual DOM. Okay. Now what virtual DOM does on top of it, whenever you do a set state or whenever you want to update a UI, at that time it club all the DOM changes. Okay. And then it will do a diffing algorithm. It run a diffing algorithm which called reconciliation. Okay. So what it will do is it will reconciliate with its current snapshot, like current value of DOM, with the previous snapshot. So till now it's not, we are not talking interacting with real DOM. So अभी तक हम we are still in the virtual DOM. ठीक है. So real DOM में अभी interaction हमारा चालू नहीं है. अभी still in the virtual DOM, and जो current हमारा view है, जो current virtual DOM का status है, उसको हम map diff कर रहे हैं previous snapshot के साथ. ठीक है. And then while diff, what we do is कि how does the diff work is, आपको basically ऊपर से समझाता हूँ कि कैसे काम करता है. अगर suppose like let me just open a code. I'll give a code example. That will be simple. Okay. So suppose this is my tick here, right? And I tick have this h1 hello world, and say it have one more div here, okay? And have another div here, and div is closing, and it have some value called like say another div, say me. Now in the current state what will happen is कि मैंने जब इसको diff को change किया, right? So now this when we'll diff from the previous snapshot, there was nothing here. There's no third element was there. ठीक है. So but these two components were there. So what the algorithm will do is कि this will pick this component and will attach here. ठीक है. कुछ delete नहीं होगा, कुछ replace नहीं होगा. So it's still way faster than the DOM update. Now, what happens if I change this div to say p paragraph? Right. In this case, what the diffing algorithm is going to do is it won't go and check for the child nodes. If the parent node is different, right? The parent node type is different. So previously we have a div element, and now I changed it to a p element, like paragraph tag. अगर दोनों डिफरेंट हैं तो इट विल क्लियर द ओल्ड नोड, मतलब उसको रिमूव कर देगा, कोई चेक आगे नहीं होगा, एंड इट विल अपडेट विद अ कॉपी ऑफ द न्यू नोड. सो इट विल पिक द होल नोड लाइक इसके चाइल्ड एंड एवरीथिंग एंड रिप्लेस विद द एग्जिस्टिंग वन without any check, like one-to-one check. It's as simple as that. And there's one more key concept we have to remember while working with React.js is the keys, right? So if you're working with nested nodes and if you're running a for loop, right, that time what happens is कि जैसे अगर आपने suppose मैंने यहाँ div किया, okay, and now suppose I have multiple span tags, right, and suppose Here we have user 1 and say user 2 and say user 3. ठीक है. Now what going to happen is कि अगर मैं suppose यहाँ पे एक और span insert करता हूँ and I say user 0. So in current scenario, my diff won't recognize कि ये जो child nodes हैं ये same है कि different है, because it looks from the keys. So what it's going to do is कि ये पूरे child node उठाएगा यहाँ के और existing nodes को हटा के वापस से इनको repaint करेगा, like re-add करेगा, right? So there's 3 extra operations, like you have to add 3 extra child nodes. Now to remove this extra thing, like to remove this extra operations, you have to use keys. So what key does it? Okay, suppose मैंने यहाँ पे key दिया user 1 and suppose जनरली अगर आप कोई भी एप्लीकेशन के साथ कर रहे हैं तो आपको यूनिक आईडी मिलती है हर एक डेटा के साथ, ठीक है, एंड यू कैन यूज दैट यूनिक आईडी एज द की. And this key can be anything. It don't need to be a alphanumeric value. It can be a pure numeric value also. It can be anything. It just need to be unique. Okay. Okay. Now in this scenario, what will happen is कि once my virtual reactjs reconciliation engine will come here, diffing algorithm, we'll see that the older keys are still same, right? Still there. And I'm seeing a new element with a new key. So the engine will understand कि ये जो डेटा मेरे पास ऑलरेडी है, जिनके पास ओरिजिनल कीज रिटेन्ड है, उनको मुझे रिमूव नहीं करना है, बिकॉज दोज आर करेक्ट वैल्यू. सी व्हाट आई कैन डू इज आई कैन जस्ट इंसर्ट अ न्यू स्पैन एलिमेंट एंड दिस शुड वर्क फाइन. ठीक है. आई थिंक आई स्टार्टेड द रॉन्ग वे. ठीक है. नहीं, तो this is the overall concept of virtual DOM. You need to understand virtual DOM because you'll keep using it more and more. Like how to say, when we'll start dealing with sorry. So when we'll start dealing with more and more React states, React props, then we'll understand ki how does this virtual DOM comes in play, right? And this whole thing is very flexible. React.js is very flexible component library. It's actually, you'll realize कि you can use React with other libraries also. It won't create any issues. The only rule in React.js is to keep your functions as pure as possible with respect to props. So what does a pure function means to you, right? So for example, say I create a multiply function, right? And I say A and B are my input parameters. एक simple pure function example है, ठीक है. And what is this going to return? It's going to return me A multiplied by B. Okay. Now, if I run multiply anytime, and pass any set of numbers, right? Any set of input values. So if I pass 2 and 3, it will always going to give me 6. If I pass 4 and 5, it will always going to give me 20. ठीक है. तो प्योर फंक्शन how does is work is कि ये given a set of input हमेशा constant output generate करते हैं, ठीक है. तो अगर मैं 2 and 3 दूंगा तो हमेशा no matter when I'm calling this function, but if the input is 2 and 3, the output will always be 6. Similarly, when I calling passing 4 and 5, no matter what is the where I'm calling this method, the output will always be 20. Okay. Now, what is the impure function then, right? Now, हमें ये समझ में आ गया कि pure function क्या होता है, impure function क्या होता है. So, for example, instead of this, if I wrote something like this, कि A is equal to 5, and then I'm returning A multiplied by 5. ठीक है. अब क्या होगा इस केस में, अगर मैं रन करता हूँ तो मुझे ideally I should get 20, but I'm getting 25 because I have manipulated my inputs. ठीक है. तो React.js ये कहता है कि when you're dealing with props, when you're dealing with input properties, so when Okay, we'll go deeper in this. Like when we'll be dealing with properties, like all the input attributes which pass in a component, all are called props. ठीक है? So those need to be pure. You cannot change those. Those are immutable for the child component. And other than that, you can do anything you like. That's simple. So this is something about React, and now let's come to the installation part. So reactjs you can install using multiple things. Like you can do the older way कि आप जाके directly reactjs की library को अपने script tag में add कर लें, and you can start using it. Or you can use the compiled version. You can download reactjs. Hi Raman, welcome to the channel. Or you can directly install it, and you create a new package.json project, install it, and or you can use create react app, which we'll be using here. So create react app, and you can so how do you install a create react app? Is very simple. You have to go to a terminal. Sorry, my bad. Okay, and just you can just say okay, no, npmi create react. Or before that, you need to like do a npm init to create your project, and just say npmi and save create. And this will download this package, and then you can just run this package and start working with this. But I'm not going to use this here. We are going to use create react app, but we are going to use it with the code sandbox. So there's multiple places where you can code online, and then you can connect it to your GitHub, like Stack Blitz, Code Sandbox, glitch.io, and we will using Code Sandbox here. So Code Sandbox का भी हमको आप थोड़ा ट्यूटोरियल दे ही देता हूँ मैं कैसे काम करता है. It's quite simple. It's quite easy to use. So what you have to do here is just click on create sandbox, or you can click on new sandbox. I will click on create sandbox. And what here we are looking, we are not looking for React, we are looking create React app, right? So either you can use the React sandbox right away, or you can just create React app. You can search for here. So you won't find it here. You have to go and explore templates, and you say create. Okay, so there's a create React app, create reactive TypeScript, create React app with TypeScript, but we're not, this tutorial is just for the basic part. From TypeScript पे भी देखेंगे. We're just looking basic of the JavaScript, the reactjs. So हम यहाँ create React app select करते हैं, and in a moment my box should be ready. Okay, so this is create React app version 4 beta example. It comes with material UI, which we are not interested on. There's a git. Okay, so git ignore file is basically if you want to if you don't want to commit something in your project, you need to put it in your git ignore. So generally node models is something which you don't want to push in your GitHub project, so you keep it in the git ignore file. And then your environment variables and the environment files also, and this debug logs. So and readme.md is basically the file which will gives the just about your application. तो इस पे आप जाकर लिखते हो कि how to run my application, what I have used on my application, what my application will do, all those things. And it uses markup language. So yeah, quite similar to HTML, but not exactly HTML. And this is the create React app. So create React app uses React scripts to run the build process. So you cannot see npm the start and the run methods here, which is basically will be React script start, React script stop, eject. Now these are the something about the setup part. अब हम जाके देखते हैं कि exactly हमारी main files में क्या होगा, ठीक है? So in create React app you will find two folders always, a source folder and a public folder. Okay, public folder will file an index.html file. Now, this index HTML file is important because the React uh, application needs a node to be rendered, right? By default, it doesn't render in your application in an HTML file. Okay? Generally, even if you're importing as a source or you're importing as a module reactjs, what you'll do is you define a node with ID, or you can define with class name. Sorry, it's good to define via ID because the pehla concept of the semantic UI, you will have one node with single ID, like only unique ID. There would be two nodes with same ID. Okay, it have a title tag, meta tags couple of which will uh, define the type of language you're using here, your shortcuts icon, your viewport skill. This will have this tag is helpful when you're working with a responsive design, and the theme color which works for your if you want to work with uh, different themes, whether it's a light or dark version. It's supported in many browsers these days. And title is basically it will come in here on your page. Like if I open this URL in some other application, if I hover here, this is my page. This is showing up from this title. So if I change this to say web desktop, and now if I refresh this, it should be okay. The URL changed. Sorry. So if I change this to this and now it's desktop, right? So now our app text. Okay. So we are not worrying about all these part. This is the head of part. Basically, the head section define the details about your application. You can put your scripts and CSS file also here, but anything you keep here will delay the loading of your main body, right? And this is your div ID, which is root, and okay. All right. So let's go to the source folder, which is the important to us. And within source folder, you see what we see here is react dom.render, and then we theme to provider. So let's do one thing here. ठीक है, हम इसको हटा देते हैं यहाँ से. We'll create a basic application. Let's remove this whole thing. Okay. ठीक है, सब कुछ हटा देते हैं. And we'll remove themes here also, and we'll remove now we just have a react dom and app. Okay, let's go to our app.js, and यहाँ से भी let's remove everything. We don't require the copyright, and let's remove this whole thing. Now before we'll start writing the code here of return here, we need to understand what is how to write the code here, right? So you see a lot of okay, let's go a step back. So हम यहाँ पे देख सकते हैं we have container box. These kind of style formatting is called JSX, which is JavaScript XML. Yeah. So this is defined by React guys. You can use it or you don't want to use it, you cannot. So I mean, you can rename this page to app.jsx also if you want, and or don't. It doesn't make much difference. But if you're working with TypeScript, then you can have stricter laws. जहाँ पे आप देख सकते हो कि if you're returning a service or if you're returning a JavaScript object, then use a .ts extension, like you're writing more of your controller code. And if you're returning a template and if you're using to create a component and you use .tsx, right? So there'll be a .ts or .tsx, and similarly you can have .js or .jsx. So to make the segregate the difference, कि मैं .js extension file में I'll keep the controller part of my application, and the .jsx I'll keep the templates, the component part of my application. So basically what you're trying to say is if my extension is .jsx, I will be returning some kind of HTML, like some kind of HTML data template. Okay. So This is the JSX concept here. Let me just move this. So, JSX, if you don't hesitate looking at those code, this is nothing, it's just a function. So, JSX is basically a transpiled version of function. I mean, the this thing transpiled back to another function, and all these things you pass here is transpiled to a parameters, which is used by a function. Okay. So, let's see how does the conversion of a JSX look like. Okay. So let's create a JSX element here. Say constant lm is equal to say div and say getting started with reactjs. Okay. And let's close this. Now, what I'm doing is actually if you're installing reactjs in your local, right? तो आपको and you creating a fresh webpack project, then you need to install a Babel transpiler also, because your browser doesn't understand reactjs by default. It's not something which is, this code cannot be understood by Java. Your browser, it will definitely fail. So it need to be transpiled back to a language which is understood by your JavaScript. Okay. I'm sorry, understand by your browser. Okay. To that, for that, we use Babel. Babel is a transpiler, not a compiler. It transpiles one version of JavaScript to another version of JavaScript. So from here, we converting back to a ES5, ES15, and if you see, this is a valid statement in React.js, but this is not a valid statement in JavaScript. So what Babel will does it once we transpile it, will convert it. So it's something like this. It will say react.create element, and that's why if you see here, even I am not using React anyway, right? I'm not using react.useState and not, okay, but I have to use a React component. Okay, let me just remove this whole thing. Let me just give you a simple example with the div. Say I say div, say getting started. Header. Okay, so this is a valid statement in React.js, and I'm importing React, though I'm not using React anyway, right? Because under the window, under the hood, this whole statement means I'm using React object. And React, what method I'm using from React object is dot create element. Okay. So this will be, okay, remove this. This whole line will be transpiled to this thing, create element, create a div element which is having a null object and the content as getting started with React.js. Okay, cool, right? Now let's see what happens if I pass a attribute here. Let's say title is equal to sorry, I just got a new keyword something, and let's see. Now if you see, my this part is portion which was earlier null. Okay, why don't I do that? I give you two examples. It will be easy to compare for you. Element with props, and this is one going to be element without props. Right now, if you see, if we compare the one with props and the one without props, you can see the property values, property object is null here, and the property object is not null here. It's passing the property I'm passing here. And similarly, I can pass multiple objects here. I can say ID, I can say one, I can say, show, which just can be Boolean values, true, and all those values will be available as an object here too. And that's why you can access this whole object as a props in the child components, which we'll cover later in this session itself. So I hopefully you understand why do we import React here and what is a JSX element. So though we write components like div, components like h1, h2, those are all synthetic elements. They eventually get converted back to this converted back via React create element. Okay. All right. Sita, uh, if you understand something or if you have any doubt, just ping me or use the forum to uh, put up your doubts. And if you're not able to get what I'm saying, probably then also you can just comment me back. I don't want to make it a bowling session. Hopefully, this is my uh, initial try with teaching something. Okay. Let's see what have we covered. We have covered what is a React. We have covered component, all about installation. Okay. Okay. Now, uh, let's go to one more core concept of React is component, right? So even if you go to the React homepage, they say that it's a declarative component based language, right? You have to see you define multiple encapsulated components which can be used in different places and reused, not just used, it can be used in different places. So to start with React, just like the basic thing is we need to have one component which can be rendered. So we have created a default component called app here, and I'll come to this export and import part also. If you don't know, you can comment down. This is the module system, and how does this work is also we can talk about. Okay, why don't I do this? I'll just explain quickly how does it work. So basically, what it does is it will when you do a default import, default export, it will default export an object without a name. Okay. Now I can name this thing with anything, right? Say app to use. Okay. So these are called unnamed exports, which can be accessed by any name because it's a default export. There's also uh, named export. If I just say like this, okay, then I have to do something like this. So then I have to give exact keyword. So when I export as a named, right, तो क्या होता है कि the whole thing will be wrapped inside an object. Okay, so say let's define export. If I say export element, okay, say constant x is equal to 1 and I'm exporting x. Okay, so what this transpile means is it will return an object with value key called x and value called 1. Okay, now you need this key to access this objects. So but if I say export default x, it will directly import the object x. I mean the value of the object x, which will be the 1. And then you can just do any name import over there. Yeah. Hopefully confusing नहीं था मतलब. Okay. We'll see the examples here. Like कोई problem नहीं है. फिर देखेंगे. काफी यूज होने वाला है. Okay, let's keep it app. So as we said earlier, okay, everything in React.js is a component based. Okay, so we need to define multiple components to be used or reused again and again in the application. Okay. So to start with, we need to create at least one component which we have created here called app. App it's running a JSX object called div and some text value, which is your inner HTML. Now, how does the React render works? Is React render basically takes two parameters. First is the component, which will be app in our case, and second will be the element where you want to render, right? So now the index HTML comes into the picture. So we have defined an ID called root. Generally, you will see a lot of examples where people define ID as root, where they are rendering their React.js application. So अब होगा क्या? So imagine if you're working with Angular and you have added a new React.js project also. So what you can do is you can just create a new element, like new section, and you can render at that node your application, like React application, and your other application can still work on there, right? So it won't disturb the rest of the application. और ये अपनी खुद का एक horizon बना के वहाँ पे काम करेगा without disturbing the outer field. As long as they are not interacting directly to it, it won't affect anyone. So yep, it's pretty flexible, quite flexible. Now, so second thing is the element where we want to render. So we'll say document element by ID, and the element by the ID is the root, right? And hopefully now our app should render. Okay, great. So our getting started header is coming, right? So our app.js is now loading up because we have the component ready with us. Okay. Now since we're talking about the JSX part, right? Let's go a little bit detail in JSX कि क्या क्या इसमें हमें कर सकते हैं, क्या क्या नहीं कर सकते, ठीक है? So what first of all, like, let's see what things you can embed in JS, right? JSX. So you can actually embed all the JavaScript what you do in your normal JS file in a JSX because basically it's a function, right? So you're executing it. Let's see a simple example here. Okay, what happens if I do this, right? Let's say constant value is equal to some val, and move these things because it's one transfer. So as you can see, all the values we are passing inside the inner HTML is going as part of this value, right? Let's see, do one more thing here. Can you see the content here? Okay, let me show you one more thing. Now what I'll do is I'll see, right, constant say func and is equal to an anonymous function which will just return to me. Okay, and now what we can do is you can actually call this function here. So let's see. Functional more these days is class components getting obsolete. The class component is kind of getting obsolete because the problem with class components coming with too many lifecycle methods, and people start abusing the lifecycle methods. That's why in upcoming versions of the React.js, I think from version 16 itself, React.js started marking some of the lifecycle method as unsafe because they are removing in the upcoming version, and they are forcing people to use more and more functional components because then you are writing more and more pure JavaScript. Okay? The problem with class components is that you are writing more and more impure functions because a lot of people then start changing the props itself, like props in their file, which is not allowed, like which is allowed but not been authorized by reactjs. Reactjs says don't update your props in your child components. So uh, and it causes a lot of issues, like eventually it causes a lot of issues and trouble, and I'll show examples of a state class-based component and a functional-based component, and we'll see like how easy it is to achieve the same thing from a function-based component. Okay, so there's an interesting thing. If you've seen, I don't know whether I've seen it or not. So if I write any uh, JavaScript object within my inner HTML, it goes as a comma separated value, and the next string will go as another comma separated value. And if I add another a JS expression, it will go another as a another parameter. And all these parameters are then these values are evaluated, and then all these strings were joined and written back as an HTML. Okay. जनता कुछ भी आपको डाउट हो, कुछ समझ में ना आए और जो मैं समझा उसमें कुछ डाउट हो, प्लीज यूज द चैट बॉक्स immediately. This is my first time of doing this, so I don't want to miss something, and I'm definitely gonna improve next time. आपको कुछ भी doubt हो, use this platform. Uh, I'm here to help. If I don't know, probably I'll figure out and do it in next level and reply next stream. And अगर पता होगा तो obviously मैं reply कर ही दूंगा. ठीक है. So to show the example, like मैंने example बेबल में इसलिए दिखाया आपको कि pretty much you can use any JS expression in your application without any issue. I mean, you can use a function here. Okay, so let's say if you have send title, or let's say title is getting passed from the profs, right? And you can say props dot title, and you can pass further values here, like key is equal to, we can say constant key is equal to, say, 1 now on, and you can pass the variables, you can pass the functions, and those will be evaluated in the runtime. Yeah. Now what if I go back here and just pass title as getting started header, or let's say now my whole component will render and I'll get the reactjs. Okay, so to render my application, right, I need this react.render. Till I don't run this command, agar a simple tip how to debug your application. If suppose you have written your reactjs application but it's not rendering up, you need to go and check whether you're actually rendering your application or not. The first thing, is go and check your console logs, which just comes here, like you go to inspect element or control shift high console, check here, do you have any errors? If your error box is clear, then second thing is to look into react.render. Okay, all right, so that was about embedding expressions in JSX. Okay. Okay. Okay, one more thing here, like so I told you about you can pass the string value as an expression here, like you can say string literal key as 1, or you can have a JavaScript object like this, like JavaScript expression, and say like key. These are valid value, and also what you can do here is you can actually wrap multiple child components within a JSX component. So say let's create one more folder here, for example, right? So we are going to build an application in the end, an application which will be basically where if you can input the name of players and it will assign a number to them. Like suppose you're playing a game and you want to assign a number to every person for the chance, you can do that. The second level of that application will be you can pick 2 captains, and then the rest of the person which are available, that will be evenly distributed among those 2 teams. So you can have like X number of people, then you have n number of teams, and then you have to pick n leaders, captain from a team, and after that all the remaining players will be distributed evenly across those teams, number of teams. Hopefully I make my you won't find this application or this question anywhere. I've just thought about it, so I thought I will build it. That's my whole goal, to build some unique problem. थोड़ा मजा आता है उसमें करने में, क्योंकि वो अवेलेबल नहीं होता. Even if you Google it, you won't find it any solution. Let's create a new component called say title, and within title let's create a you know what, I'm feeling lucky today, so I'm index dot So this is the thing about JavaScript. You don't need to name the file as title.jsx. It's the only file. It's a root file. You can say index.jsx and you फिर जब हम import करेंगे the relative path will give till title and it will understand it. So as usual, we need to import React first. And if you don't know why I'm doing this, just go back to this stream. Okay, and let's say constant title is equal to say props uh, let's see spans again, and we have expression here props dot sorry, that's a new keyboard. And one simple export, then export. Okay. Right now what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the app.jsx. We're just going to import the little component. So it's like dot relative paths and component slash. That should work now. And so as I said कि हम लोग क्या करते हैं कि हमने multiple components को हम wrap भी कर सकते हैं इसमें any component, like it can be a custom attribute component. So as our title is a custom component, right? And we can just say so title is equal to props. Okay. Now my getting started with is the HTML inner HTML which is coming from my app.js file, and the rest of the reactjs, which is the title I'm passing from my index.jsx here, is picking from my title component. Okay guys, any doubt, anything? Okay, so that was all about how to define a component, how to define a JSX JSX template, and what are the limitations of a JSX template, and what you can pass, what you cannot, yeah, and what you can wrap, what you cannot. So as we are saying, it's very flexible. It's pretty much flexible. You can do quite a lot of things with it. And remember, you can also do it like this. You can write a pure HTML. So you can create a React, create element, and return it back. That will also gonna work. Okay. Break. मतलब बोरिंग हो रहा है क्या बहुत? Okay. So from JSX, let's move to one more concept called rendering and how do we render components. So I kind of covered this earlier, but I'll just mention it again. So we need a React DOM component and React DOM object, which we import from separate library called React DOM. So if you're creating a new application, don't forget to install React DOM also apart from React. And React DOM have a method called render where we pass the component which need to be rendered. So we need to always pass a root node, a root component, which is going to be rendered over. particular node, and this is the node where I'm going to insert my application. Arey, puff. I don't know, like when viewership drops like anything, so without kind of getting bored. I mean, it's had nothing to do with your position. I mean, teaching is something which is not the case of everyone. Like it's not a cup of tea of everyone. I'm just trying my hands on it. Hopefully, I can find some interesting way or fun way to teach people. It doesn't look like more bookish. Uh, ठीक है. I mean, I'm just trying to conclude the basics here, and we'll try to build some fun applications. Hopefully, that it will make more sense. ठीक है. Okay, so this is all about like this is the main role it plays React now, where you pick it, render it, your application using this. Now, we'll come to like when the most important concept, like which is you will deal mostly in your day-to-day life. It's called components. So components in React is basically a very small bit full of code which can run as an independent function. Okay. So everything is basically a function in Java, in React, whether you're creating a class component or you're creating a functional object component. Okay. It's a function which will be executed and which will return you back. Mostly, it will actually return you back an HTML content. Okay. So there are two types of components: stateful and stateless. Okay. So this is an example of a stateless component. Okay. And let's create an example of a stateful component here. For here itself, let's create one. Let's create a game. Okay, let's create a nav.js. I'm not going to create this. Okay, so import. So starting a command same रहेगी, will be board style. Now something will change here. Like we'll define class. Let's export default class game header. Now remember, we're defining a stateless component using class-based component. This is not a functional component. ठीक है. तो हम class-based component देखेंगे, फिर हम functional component देखेंगे. Functional component क्या होता है, ठीक है? So and we'll implement the same thing in the functional component. ठीक है? Hope it makes sense. And so basically, if it's a class, it have to extend another class, which will be sorry. And if you're creating a component, you have to react the component, or you can do a react.pure component. React.pure component, what it does, it top of component, it does do it does some basic checks. Keep other previous component or next components are same, then don't run a new like don't run the lifecycle methods again and again. So generally, it prefer to use a pure component rather than a react.component. Now, first lifecycle method constructor. It can call only once and take props, and you need to call the props to a super property. And why I'm doing this, you need to go back and check your oops based concept. And if you don't understand the class properly, you're going to go back and check what is the oops based concepts are there. Like, if not, you can just ping it out. I can explain it in some time. And let's create this dot state. And okay, so let's not create game header. Let's create a game, or say up, down, feedback. Actually, let's create a feedback. Okay, so in this feedback component, what it will have it will have two options. One is to up mark, which one is to down mark. Okay? So basically, you can up and down, like vote up or vote down your application. So if you're having this, you need two values, right? Up count which will be numbers, let's say 0, and which will have a down count, and which is also 0 for now. And yeah, so there's a component did mount methods are there. There's a life segment. So this will call once your application is rendered. Okay. Immediately after that. So we are not going to do anything, and just giving example. There's another component and will unmount. So this method will get called once your application is removed. So as we know, all the application, like all the components render as a node in your DOM tree, right? So in case of reactjs, it's virtual DOM. So every component renders a node in your virtual DOM. And the moment your application doesn't require it, it removes from the virtual DOM. और जैसे ही आपका component virtual DOM से remove होता है, तो you get a callback in sorry, in your this method, and you can perform a set of operations. You can use it for garbage collection, like there's some open state which you want to close. There's open events, like event handlers which you have attached to something. You can just remove those attached event handlers, because those work consume some of the memory. So that basically all your garbage collection work goes here. And the third thing which are more important, render. Okay, so render is the property which render the elements. In our case, let's say we have a div. Okay, so since it's a method, right, render, so it's required to return the value. So now we're returning a div, and inside the div we'll have two other divs, and which will be तो इसको हम लेते हैं यहाँ पे कॉल डालते हैं, सॉरी, एंड लेट्स थोड़ा सा इसको प्रीडिफाई करते हैं. यहाँ पे कॉल, एंड लेट्स से इट कैन बी up, and count only show if it's greater than 0. So this dot state dot count, it's there, else don't show anything. Similarly, let's go to down count, and it's it's not OP. Okay, now we have simple two strings, div with the strings, where the value can go up or value can go down. Like click on up, it should go show up, and if we click on down, it should show down count, right? Now I need to import these values here. Like if just say like import nav, or say from nav, which doesn't make sense. Need to change. And let's render the game below here. Since my game component doesn't require any variable, I am not passing any variable here, like any properties here. Okay. Let's create a CSS file, because we need to. Let's say dot throw, say split flex and the extraction, throw, and say, I think this is more than fine. Like we don't want to align it for now. Let's do थोड़ा सा alignment पे देते हैं. Justify content found. evenly. And this is more than enough. It's file. Okay, go here. So slash index.css. Give a class name here. So as we discussed earlier, right? All the elements we are using in React.js, like जो हम यहाँ पे div use करें, all these are synthetic elements, right? So they do look like they feel like your HTML elements, but they are not actual HTML elements. These are like synthetic elements. These are created via .react.create element, and there we actually create elements. So similarly, in normal HTML elements, अगर आप चाहेंगे, we write a class. Okay, you don't write class name. In case of our these synthetic HTML elements, we give a class name, and the class name will pass the class variable, the CSS name. And see now our up and down is quite aligned now. Like earlier they were up and down, and we wanted like side by side. This is okay. You can. And I won't get there. This is fine. All right. So ठीक है. Now now we have imported our game component here. It's coming here now. Everything is working fine. ठीक है. But हमें क्या करना है? अभी हमें on click करना है. Now all the event handlers, if you go and check in your normal HTML elements, right? Normal default HTML elements. Generally, you will find most of the event handlers as lowercase. Like on click, ठीक है, on key down. But in case of JavaScript, in case of React.js, everything is camel case. Okay, so it's not on small c, it's on capital C. Click. Uh, let's say create a method called wait count. Now, what we're going to do in update count is we're going to do a set state. Okay. In a set state, we're going to only update one particular value, which is up count. And how are we going to update is up count dot. Yeah, we should not directly mutate the value, which is the warning I'm getting. So I'm just going to push apply to a variable and say val dot plus plus here. And okay, let's see if I thirteen 28 is it clear? Okay. Yeah, okay. Well, check pure again. So the value is coming and start everything of count. Okay, let's enter the value of principal dot. clear this thing. No. Whoa. Okay. So that was the thing. Since I was doing in the initial object, it was not reflecting. But if you see, if I now my update count is working, right? Now my up count is working. Now say update up, right? Now I'll just change this to update down count. Okay. And similarly, I'll just use down count here and say down. I don't need this log anymore. I don't need this log anymore. And I don't need this log anymore. So as you see, like how you can just use console log to simply debug your application. And okay, now we need a on-click handler. And just need this. So we need to change the function name here. It's not update count anymore. It's update count and it's update down. Okay, so now my down count is working, my up count is working, right? So my feedback count is working now. But I want to show you one more thing here. This is the whole experience of updation work. So constructor get called once, okay, while mounting, and then it can never get called while updating. Okay, so we'll look into updating what it called. Then get derived state from props get called once, render get called once, and then you get component mount after the React updates. Okay. But whenever you update a prop, like say like the way we are doing updating a prop here, say up count and down count. After that, what happens is it goes to again to the get derived state from props, which will call your component will receive props, and then it will go should component update method. Now, if you return a false value from should component update, it won't update your state and it will stop it here itself. Right? It won't render. Okay. Now you have this flexibility to stop your rendering on base of some condition. Now, but if you run a force update, in that case, it will update your render application no matter what is the status. Okay. So how does this should component get triggers for set state, which we are doing here, or receiving a new prop. So suppose this feedback is getting called from here, right? As again, it should be actually feedback. So since the feedback is calling here, and if suppose they will passing some variable here, some properties here, अगर वो properties change होती हैं, तो मेरा जो ये feedback है, it will re-render again. The whole feedback component will re-render again. But since I'm not passing anything from here, it's not dependent upon it. So it won't re-render. It will only render if I do a set state. Now set state is a very interesting thing. The thing is that set state works on a snapshot basis. Okay? So it's not like if I update one key, other key won't like reset to 0 or some undefined value. See, if I click on up, right, 2 times, and now when you click on down, okay, so down is updating only down count, not other variables, but it's still retaining the previous variable. So my state is still have the previous variable, the value of up. So how does it work? Is it actually works in the updating a key value only. Like so it will take a snapshot of previous value, previous state, and see what is the cutting updating. Only it will update only that particular key, and it won't touch any other value. That's why they say never to do this. This dot state dot value like up count is equal to something. This is an anti pattern. You should never do this. So जो main funda है, like जो main हमारा like rule है जो लिखा हुआ है, which you should not overcross is never update your state directly, like this dot state is equal to this, Never update your props directly if your child component, like if I'm getting some value from my this dot props, I cannot do this dot props is equal to something else. That is not a, that is an anti-pattern. It's a bad coding in terms of React itself, at least. Okay. Um, hmm. Guys, any doubt about this class component? कोई है तो नहीं है उसे? Sorry. Right. Now, let's try to build the same thing in a functional component, right? So this is a stateful component as a class component, and now we'll build a stateful functional component. ठीक है? हम क्या करेंगे? इसको हम comment कर देंगे full code को, and let's see constant feedback is equal to a function, and it should return a div. Obviously this thing should be same. The template which you are returning is same in the both of the places, but the concept is a little different. So first thing you will notice here is there is no constructor I've written. There is no render method here. Okay, which is very important in case of class. You cannot render an value without a render method. Okay, now let's create a state here. Okay, so we'll be using hooks to create state. It's very simple. Let's create say feedback every state and set every state, and say react dot chapter. And how are we going to initialize? With two values, which is one is our count and on count. Sorry. We need to change something here. This won't be anywhere this. It will be this every state. Okay, sorry. This is a method name, right? So it's not required. This dot state will move to every state. This dot state will move to every state, and then we will be defining some method name here. Since it's a functional component, we don't require this anymore because we're binding directly to the variable. Okay, so constant say see, we can use the same method name. Okay, and we'll say we'll come back here because यहाँ पे हमारे क्या होएगा one step. Now we don't require this anymore because again this is a pure functional component, and hosting time this variable will be mapped to this particular variable, and we don't need this scope, giving a scope anymore. All right, so we used a hook to create a state. Use state is another hook, and what we're going to do is we're going to do a set every state. Set every state, what we have to do is here कि we need to set a full state. ठीक है, either we can do like this कि यहाँ पे up count डाला जैसे वीडियो कर लिया, or we can do have one more thing like say previous state and previous state. क्या हो रहा है? Say up count. Oh, it's a okay. Okay. Where's semicolon? I don't know. This should work. Okay, let's do one thing. Remove this part and move this to every state. I think this I have to change the version of the transpilation, but because it's not able to. हाँ wait अभी तो हमने कुछ export ही नहीं किया. Okay, and same thing will go here, and one more thing need to do here. Simple export alt this thing. Now it should come up here. So see, till we don't exported a component, हमें एक error आ रही थी because and now you can see right कि if you see these kind of error कि मुझे element type is invalid expected as string, so go immediately look at one of the your methods, like you might be screwed up something or there, or you're not exporting it correctly. All the simple issues I think, these kind of issues. Okay, now let's say export before this. Okay, let's click here. Let's click here. Now compare the code, right? The amount of code we have written to make a class component and the amount of code written to do a functional component is quite small and simple to understand, right? And this is and so the thing is there are also lifecycle methods present in functional component. Suppose you want to call a method which is called only on the render of the application, right? Suppose my render of the application mein, once my application render, I want to set up to 10. What I'll do is I have to use a use effect. So react dot use effect is a, it's little advanced concept, but I just kind of I'm telling you to compare the lifecycle methods. थोड़ा सा idea मिलने के लिए. We'll take it more detail in the next advanced course जहाँ पे हम will talk about the suspense and boundaries and hooks in more detail. Okay, now okay, so I like two things here. When you write a use effect, right, without any dependency, it will be called only the rendering of the method. And the return statement here is written. This will be calling on the unmount of the application. That's why I written a comment is clean. Okay, it's as simple as that. And the moment, and I can have multiple use effect here. I'm not bounded with having one use effect. I can have one use effect where I'm having dependency of every state. जब ये change होता तब मैं कुछ करना चाहता हूँ, ठीक है. This will be called separately, this will be called only once. So this dependency tree will go later in the advanced course, but in the basic thing you have to understand कि अगर मुझे life cycle methods compare करूँ rendering और unmount की, mounting and unmounting, so this will be called on mount, like once it's render after render, and this will be called words get return, like removed. See, my up is coming by default with mark of 10. Now click on this, it will start from 11, 12. Okay. प्रॉब्लम इज कि मुझे डाउन काउंट भी पास करना पड़ेगा वरना मेरा पूरा ऑब्जेक्ट अपडेट हो जाएगा. Okay, got it. So this was about lifecycle methods, and by default we don't need it, so we don't require it. And welcome Naresh, welcome. Okay, so we just covered stateful components for the class base as well as functional component, and now let's talk about let's talk about a bit about stateless component, right, where they don't have a state. So this is a simple example of a stateless component where you don't have any update, and I can write as a functional component, for example, equivalent functional component. It's just return this whole thing. That's it. Now you might question ki why do we need a template like functional component which doesn't have their own state and they don't want to they're not doing anything. Okay. So this can help you to create like templates. So let's go example about like Twitter, right? So you have too many templates, like these tweet templates are same and you have multiple of it, right? And they're kind of not doing anything except showing information. Everything else is a callback. So similarly here, right, everything else is a callback, and here, so you can create multiple templates as a DOM component, and it's very important to recognize when you want to create a DOM component and when you want to create a smart component. Well, basically component with state and component without state. Okay, once again. All right. Okay, so yeah, I'll just remove this, and now we have seen example of a stateful component, a stateless component, and a class-based component and a functional-based component. Because hopefully this much is clear to you. This part is very important to keep updated your concept here. Keep stateful, stateless, functional, and class-based component. Okay, इसमें चीज़ें clear, then we can move forward. And these days, people prefer to go with the functional component as it is more flexible and easy to use, and it's more descriptive in a way. Okay. So one more thing where people kind of stuck is like how to pass the data to your children elements, right? So here, the way React communicates with children is via props. Okay? And it's a one-way thing, right? You can pass data to children, but children cannot manipulate that data. So let's go, for example, in the title component, I have this props, right? So everything passed as a props. Okay, for example, if I go back here to my app component and pass title, I'll pass say key is equal to title and say maybe on click a method, say nothing but a callback. Now when I'll go back here and log my props, right? So all the items we have passed earlier should be available here. Let's do a quick refresh and see. Click on my props. I'm getting the title on click and uh, as a props property. Okay, these are available by default to me. And now if I pass anything, let's say, so the key won't be available as a props. Key is to work as an identifier, unique identifier. So if you're passing a key property as an attribute, it won't be available in your props. But other than that, anything, any you can pass any attribute, you can name it any attribute, and it should be available in your props values, right? And similarly, it can be like so. The prop set can be nested to any level, right? So let's say let's change this to nav bar, okay? And let's say uh, you have nav bar items here, okay? And let's create one more item component here. Let's say nav item. .jsx, and here what we're going to do is we'll call it navbar and default run as navbar, and we're going to import nav from there'll be some errors now because I'm nav item isn't exporting anything, and I'm importing some css also now, which is not there. Dot slash next css, and let's create a file here. Let's create a index.css and define something that like flex nav container, and say I love flex stacks, so direction should be row and stupid content space around, not between, too much, let's say around. And let's go back to over here and let's go back to nav item and board. Do we need a nav item css? Let's create nav item css. Actually, okay, fine. And just in case we need to import some CSS file. Nav relative path, it always takes relative paths when it pass. And the please hit a like. Okay. Now let's say constant nav item. It is actually boring, live coding is kind of boring. एक ऑडिट करना चाहिए, entertaining नहीं है क्या, वही मॉडल और लिखने का, क्या वही कोड लिखने का. Alright, so हम क्या कोशिश कर रहे हैं, we will be creating a top nav bar and then we'll having a separate nav items and we'll be reusing those nav items, so you will understand how these dump components will help us. Like, so nav item by default won't have its own state, and it won't render itself. So since it doesn't have a state, it doesn't come with a life cycle methods, so it cannot re-render itself. It will dependent upon the parent or the component which have their own state, its own state. So let's create a simple div say props will come from here, and it comes oops what title, sorry, my bad. And click string nav. A good thing about functional programming is that this props is available me throughout the method, so I can use it anyway without doing this or that, where it's available in the whole scope. And say props.title is available here also, and now I don't need to pass any value here. I can just call this. Oh yeah, so there's no const. I don't know how it consider it. And yep, it should be nav click. Okay, and let's say if we do export. Oh my god. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to go back. We want to actually apply class here. Say class name is equal to nav item, and going to go here and say dot nav item. So you can say background color, say should be background. Let's keep it black. The opacity of say 0.4, then we need a separate text. We'll do it. Color should be white, and text line should be sick. Okay, and if we go back here in index.css, we have to apply here as, let's keep it as div now. I'll tell you why. And your class name here. Already have defined this class here, so I'll use this class and give a class name here. And I don't need this props.title because this is not a title. And the cool thing about JSX is you can use it as a function also, so I can define like this constant get all nav items, and you can define within JSX, so you can you use JSX as part of your functional component, and you can use perform if else all kind of statements here. So let's just say return my start nav array. Now the cool thing about map is map returns a new array, so we don't have to assign it. You can just do a return from here, or nothing have to done from here. An array will have an item which was returning, and we don't want index here. We can live without index, and what we're going to do here is we're going to return a nav item, which will have a title, and that will be our item.id. Yeah, should be good. And now we can call this method from here simply like this. Okay, so this should be map of undefined. Oh yeah, so map of undefined is true because we have not defined a nav array, like we have not defined array properties here, right? And our navbar doesn't expect it, right? It expect the title and all. Let's change this to say navbar, and let's change this to navbar. Say array. And we don't need to pass all these variables, like this is an example one. So let's go and just pass the one which is needed. So we need to pass an array of objects. Okay, nav array actually, or nav array. So let's say title is equal to, not equal to, like title is equal to home, and key is the same thing. Key. Similarly, let's say contact, and say contact. Now, since we are passing key also from here itself, we can use this key concept in the props part, right? We suggested that we don't be when we are rendering multiple child components, we need to make sure that we are passing key property to help our rendering process of React. So let's say key is equal to not key. And now if you see here, like we are having home and contact. Let's do one more thing. Like let's give the whole navbar as a background color. Let's see. Can you go background color black? All right. So and okay, and just go here. Let's go some padding. Text. Okay, padding. No, so, yep, looks good. Maybe you don't need to cut. And now we don't need a back here. Again, just say cursor pointer, so whenever we hover it, it looks good at least. Yeah. And now we can go back to our app.js and remove this whole getting started with part. All right, so see, we have created a navbar here, okay, and we created a nav item here. Now it's a dumb component; it doesn't do anything, like it doesn't have their own state. But using this template, we can re-render multiple nav items within our navbar. And if you can see, my navbar is also a dumb component, and it doesn't have its own state, so it will never trigger the lifecycle method. So basically, the main difference between a stateful and stateless component is that stateful component have its own lifecycle methods. It can re-trigger the re-render, it will affect child, but a stateless component doesn't have its own lifecycle method, so it will never trigger. It will be always dependent on the parent. Like the parent agar change karta hai, then the child, this component will be re-rendering. Okay. So we have seen the extraction of props like this we're doing. We have seen creating components and creating multiple components out of it, and stating life cycle, Also handling events, right? So one more thing about events, right? मैंने आपको एक चीज़ बताई थी कि स्टार्टिंग में कि जो all the HTML elements, the elements we see, they're synthetic elements, ठीक है? But there's one more thing which is synthetic here is the events. So events is not pure events what you receive from a event handler of a click or event of key down. These all are synthetic event which are wrapper over original events. These are all like W3C standard component standard. So it will work in all the browsers. ऐसा नहीं कि जो भी आपको return मिलेगा it won't work for it, but the handling is little different for sometimes like if you want to stop event if working, like you cannot return a false, you have to do a stop propagation with every event object. And you can go to this reactjs docs and event festival and see what are the events properties which comes by default, like the prevent default is prevent defaulted, is persist, these bubble scans. So these are the variables you can pass, and the supported events it creates. All this synthetic event list is available here. It won't, if you have worked with normal JavaScript and captured event and run your application, it won't make much difference to you. मतलब आपको पता भी चलेगा कि you're working with React.js or vanilla JavaScript, but it's just a good to know. Right? It's good to know like how does it work. So let's go back and okay, before that let's do one thing. Okay, let's push our code to a GitHub repo and I'll updating further changes over there. Not material UI. I'm not logging. Oh, it's creating yeah, export to new GitHub repository. Reactjs. Right. Welcome to. So Doge House is down, guys. I cannot use it. Chanta, if you're new to this channel, please hit a subscribe. Do hit a like if you like the channel, like the content. Okay, so we have committed all our code base in a new repo, and I'll share the link of the repo in the channel description so you can go and check it out. Okay, and let's go back to our code. Let's go back to designing something, and first of all I need to change this thing name okay, to rename view. Yeah, it won't work because I need to change string to gosh. Okay, all right. Okay, so but this is not what we want to build, right? We want to build shorter, like where I can give me an input and I can cast that input and you can store that input and utilize that input. Correct? So let's start building this. Yep. So first let's go to our what is it? Skeleton. Yeah, Skeleton. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to design our app first, how it's going to look like, and then we'll start building components. So it will have a nav bar, and then it will list input box, which will be the username, and there'll be a button called enter, right? And once we'll enter the list, it will enter the list name in the list, show the name in the list. It will be a expanding list where we'll be adding username, and once I'll do that, I'll have other options here, right? So uh, there'll be a user tiles here, like the name tile, multiple of it. So I'll be having too many tiles here, which so every name represents a tile here, and what I can do here is I can either uh, then I should have option to create teams, or I want to have the option of shuffle. Let's create first thing a shuffle, right? So what shuffle will do is it will give a number to it, like so right now it's started to a list, and it will add a number in between before it. Okay, let's do it. We should call the app something. We're not using material UI. Let's do a forking here, and we'll change the name. Yeah. React. Oh, React shuffle. React team shuffle. Okay. Oh, is it? Okay. Okay, anyways, let's create a game. If it doesn't work, I'll create a new repo itself. React. Well. Yeah, it's feel good. Mm-hmm. Okay. Wow. It's already 2 hours. Okay, let's try to wrap as fast as possible. Okay. So we already have this thing. We don't require the up and down property, so we'll just remove the feedback component. Okay. And what we need next is a component to input box and a value. And when we enter back, should return back to the parent. Okay. So create a new component called user input and input box maybe. Yep. Need to rename this whole thing, and create an indexed. Fine. Let's save this, and let's go back here and let's create info. You know what? You know what? You know what? The same here. Yeah. So this is same here. We just removed this part, and okay, this is not required, and this can be renamed to back to input box, and so we'll change to this, and not required. We'll be wrapping this to another div, and we'll be changing this to a div. And okay, close this. Go here. Come here. I don't require this part. Go. So these strings are not required. We just needed an input. It was equal to next one key down. Again, these are all synthetic event. Stand on text. And this need to pass it here, and let's have a button also. And button में क्या होता है? Click होता है, and click, and that call back here probably, and say, huh? And not long, and say enter. Okay. So what we have did till now, right? We have created a button component, and we just need to pass this event here, and we're just like first step towards the our component. We are building this component, input box and enter box. Okay. So now we need to just import it. Similarly, from components, and need to render it. All right, so my input box is here, my enter box is here, by enter here, striping, cool. Go to log. Let's see. When not fully undefined, so yeah, इवन वो target वाला तो नहीं है मुझे. And let's go. So dun, 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 dun. All right. So we are having our input. We enter. That's fine. Now we need styling. This looks pretty odd. So let's just go to like advanced and put box. Let's give some padding for now. Top bottom 0 right, right. 20. So if you don't, this is a shortcut for padding. If I say two values, the first will represent the top and bottom padding, and the second one will represent the left and right. So I said like top 20, bottom 20, and I just need to pass this class here. Parent keyboard class. Yeah, and it's looking a little finer, but it's not still the way we want it, but this will work. Okay. So we got a value. Now we need to set this value somewhere, right? It's a constant user input, set input. Now what we're trying to do is we are assuming that parent will pass a callback where will be on click of the enter button will be turning back the recorded value, and then the parent will take care of it. Now what we need is we need a list. So let's create a list component. Say a user list and say okay, and in the user list we just need a let's give it caps because everything else is caps, and let's be consistent here. It's not TSX. It's not TSX. It's not TSX file. It's a JSX file. So yeah. Hey, notification. Okay, and okay, yeah, copy this thing here, and user list, and copy this thing here, and and this is not required. This is not required. Okay, this is not required. This is not required. Say host dot users dot map. This is another way to just plug in things here within the JSX and just say the return. And what you're going to return is we will wrap a component with this, and it will be like just one span with the marker rank and select span. And another span with Chanta, if you're new to the channel, please hit a subscribe. One करे दो. And let's say this item dot say so we will have the value of title, also username, and say user rank, right? And so this can be empty also, and if it's empty, yep. So basically if it's there, then do this, else empty. Yeah. So okay, looks good. Right, and now once we update here to create a array here, so constant state. We can actually create an object for this, but let's see. So you have update tab state, and you have state here. Chanta, if you're new, if you're liking the content, please hit at least like. So as I talked about the hook before, so you stated the hook, and hitting app state here, and what is the first thing you're going to do is the list, right? The user list. The key. And it will be an empty array now, and we need to import the user list. Come on. I think I'm gonna end the session after this user list part, but it's getting too late. Well, I'll probably continue tomorrow and make it more things to contribution. You can also use this library, this GitHub repo, and contribute yourself to increase your contribution star or history in the GitHub, which is kind of good to have. Component slash. No, it's not a box is a user list, so it's a user list. And no. There you go. It said abstract dot just is equal to नहीं है वो कर देंगे उसमें. Yep, cannot read map of undefined. It's true because sometimes it so I need to pass it as users, not list. Yep, it looks fine now. And use list. Let's now what you have to do is just to create a constant on user add method. Should basically take name as input, and what we're going to do next is we're going to take this name and update our state, right? That's what we're going to do. but we don't want to remove the existing value. We do want to use the existing value and we want to add date. So triple dot is not working, right? So state. Need to pass this on user add to box as on enter. Like, so because we're calling the callback on enter, this is the callback we're trying to call. And yep, looks good to me. That's a name, try it out. This one, say enter. The list of undefined state. Fucked up somewhere, so let's try to figure out what we did wrong here. Here to here, and so basically this update is causing trouble because user list is this. Oh, sorry. But there's a JSX and just yes. Why is looking like TS? Where is the TS file? Did I create a TS file? All right, this looks fine. This looks better. Mhm. Let's call it as subject to. Well, it's taking only. Hmm. And wow, it's 1 o'clock already. Great. Hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this what was we are doing earlier was correct. So let's see where it. Okay, no, this is correct, and this should work. Let's go back. Let's clear this thing out. Yeah. Wow. Okay. This is working fine. So like user one and yeah. So now what we have to do is here. In our user list, we have to make some changes here. That we need to make it a bit of. This is fine. Yeah. This is correct. And on enter, you have to clear it. So let's go back to input box and let's go back here and just clear it out. So that means that it will be initializing back, but then yeah. So press enter, yeah, and cool. Now, all right. So our list is ready. Our input box is ready. Our input box plus list is ready. And tomorrow, what we're going to do is we're going to update is to analytics. Let's wait. So set a file to index dot css say dot user list and say border, not border, we have to go to the box shadow 0 pixel 0 pixel 1 pixel and like 10 pixel and go copy this thing. Hey, should be a gap here. Code user list next dot css and we're good to go. And we just need to go here and say class name, and last name is equal to, and we give a user list. So if I give a user list here, it should fine. Yeah. Looks good to me. We can set a width because we need, a thing. Let's keep using with the, say, 40 VW. It should be enough. Yeah, that's enough actually. Let's keep it 30. Want to line this? Looks better to me. Alright, guys. So I'm closing the stream today here. What we're going to do now tomorrow is, uh, okay. So what we're going to do now is, I'm closing the stream now, and we'll continue tomorrow. From here, we'll be building the whole team shuffle app ready by tomorrow. Yeah, with some more CSS and UI changes. Hopefully, guys, we have touched base on following things today, and hopefully it's clear to you. We have started with the prerequisite from HTML, CSS, and JS to the React. Right, what is the React is and why you need React to, where you need to learn React, and the installation, everything about React in a component, the JSX, embedding expression JSX, specifying attributes in JSX, how the JSX is interpreted in JavaScript, and rendering, how does React from to render works, the components, stateful, stateless, class-based, functional-based, the life cycle of a component, the JSX attribute passed to children as extract the properties, how it's been passed, props, and how are those been extracting, and then composing the components, like multiple components into a single components, and how to utilize, mix and match all the different components and create a single app out of it. Then the states and lifecycle, using set state and use state. And we also looked at the events part, like how to, handle the synthetic events and how to deal with synthetic elements. Hopefully, this is clear to you. And when we meet tomorrow, probably you can come with some more questions or more doubts. And please comment down in the video if you have any suggestions, if you have any doubts, um, or anything in general. कोई specific नहीं है. But I want it to be more interactive, and I want you guys to learn it. Maybe if you have doubts, you can just push, and if you don't understand something, you can keep pushing for it, and that will also help me to become better explaining things. Because what I think it happens for beginners, at least, that हमें लगता है कि we explain things, but it's an our pace, and we miss some concept and we miss some things which is needed in case of people who are starting with it, or really want to learn it. So if it happened with you, if अगर आपने कहीं बीच में आके मिस कर दिया और बीच में आपको लाइक समझ में नहीं आया कि मैं क्या बकवास की है या मैं क्या बोल रहा हूँ, do contact me, do drop me a message, or meet me in the next session. Alright, guys, so this is the session, and I'll be closing the stream now. Have a good day.